The internet is a story about community and connection. A global space where we share our knowledge, our joys, and our lives. A space to receive news, services, and perspectives. The internet is where we connect. This is where ideas are shared, business is conducted, memories are preserved, and identities are shaped. A community open to all of us, to build, to form, and to protect. We are all connected. We are the internet. Let's shape our future together. We welcome you to the Internet Governance Forum 2025 in Norway.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It is my honor to welcome you to this session on behalf of UNICEF. My name is Sunita Grota. I lead the UNICEF Ventures team, where we explore how openly built emerging technologies can accelerate results for children. I'm joined for this session by my co-moderator online, Josia and Galia Brown from our Child Rights and Business function at UNICEF. We have prepared for you today a two-segment open forum. The first one will look at and bring together diverse perspectives on the unique role that different stakeholders can play in creating a safe online environment for children. In the second segment, we'll be looking specifically at how to close equity divides that we still find in the online world and in the design and implementation of digital solutions. We're going to be focusing particularly on the gender divide and looking at how to design and implement solutions for women and girls. For the first segment, I'm going to hand over to Josie, who will take us through that discussion online now. Excuse us while we try and sort out the technology. Here we go. That looks promising. Josie, can you?
Hi.
Excellent.
Can you hear me?
Okay, fantastic. So over to you for the first segment, please.
Thank you so much. Forgive the technical issues. It's great to be live now. And it's great to see everybody in the room. Thank you, Sunita, for setting the scene. Let's get started with the first part of this open forum. As has already been introduced, the first part of our forum today will focus on one key question, which is how can different stakeholders from across sectors play their part in delivering a digital world that works for children, one that keeps them safe, respects their rights, and positively supports their well-being. This task represents one of the defining challenges of our times, as we know, with countries around the world grappling with some critical questions like how will digital technologies, including generative AI, impact children's lives positively, negatively now and in the future? Or what is the right age for children to participate in online platforms? or what emerging risks and dangers await children as they explore new digital environments. These worries about what happens online speak to real-world harms and challenges experienced by children today that demand urgent action. Research published by UNICEF Innocenti earlier this month found that children who experience online sexual abuse or exploitation and online bullying have significantly higher levels of anxiety, more suicidal thoughts and behaviors, and are more likely to self-harm. So these are real-world challenges. Having said all that, meaningful access, as we'll hear more about later, are oftentimes a critical lifeline to opportunities. So our task is to protect and empower children as active participants and pioneers of the digital world, as opposed to protecting them from the digital world. So with that, I'm delighted today to be joined by 4 distinguished speakers to help us understand and explore these issues. Our panelists will take us on a tour around the world, from China to South Africa to Norway and the Netherlands, to see also different perspectives representing distinct stakeholder groups, from regulators to investors to brands and beyond, and explore how these issues are being addressed in different contexts. We have limited time, so we'll do our best to engage. We will ask you to put questions or comments in the Zoom chat only if you'd like to engage with us, and we'll do our best to either address them at the end of this part 1 or follow up with you later. So with that, let me turn to our first distinguished speaker, Ms. Zhao, Associate Professor and Secretary General of China Federation of Internet Societies, which is a body that convenes the industry under the leadership of the government. Ms. Zhao graduated with a PhD degree of political science and theory from School of Government at Peking University, and she has many years of public management experience in the field of education and a great deal of international experience as well. Ms. Zhao, thank you for joining us today.
Hello.
With the world's largest population of child internet users and a rapidly growing digital ecosystem, we'd love to hear from you. What measures is China putting in place to guide its internet industry to respect children's rights in the digital age? Over to you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. It's a great honor to address this forum. The China Federation of Social Societies started in May 2018. We are honored to hold special consultative status with the UN ECOSOC. Currently, we have 528 members, including major internet corporations like Tencent, Baidu, and Alibaba. Our goal is to promote the development of the digital economy and the informatics, carry out online public welfare initiatives, and maintain order within the internet industry. China has the world's largest population of child internet users. We have made sustained efforts in protecting minors online. First, strengthening legal safeguards. In 2020, Law of the People's Republic of China on Protection of Minors introduced a dedicated online protection chapter. In 2021, the Personal Information Protection Law further specifies special protections for children's personal data. In 2024, the regulations on the protection of minors in cyberspace addresses critical issues such as cyberbullying, data breaches, and internet addiction. Complementary regulations like the provisions on the cyber protection of children's personal information and the interim measures for the management of generative artificial intelligence services have been enacted under the guidance of the Cyberspace Administration of China. Second, enhancing government oversight. The CAC conducts annual campaigns to regulate minors' online environments, particularly during summer breaks, urging platforms to standardize youth-focused communities. Leading internet companies have improved minor mode functions, established rapid reporting mechanisms, adopted restrictive measures against cyberbullying. Collaborative efforts among public security, market regulation, and culture and tourism target game accounting trading and anti-addiction system circumvention. Third, mobilizing social forces. The CFIS has established a professional committee on minors' online protection and launched the Sport Public Welfare Initiative, protecting the rights and interests of minors. The online security and digital literacy courses we produced have received over 10 million views. Compiled and published the Minors Online Protection Annual Report 2024, promoted the preparation of national standards such as guidelines for the safety of AI technology involving minors, enhancing the protection of children's rights through industry self-discipline. Fourth, deepening international cooperation. China has learned from international best practices and shared with the world the results of its experience. CFIS partners with the UNICEF China in 2024 to launch the Safety by Design corporate case collection activity. The selected cases will introduce China's progress to global internet companies. Distinguished guests, building an inclusive digital future that respects children's rights is our shared responsibility. In September this year, we will hold the International Conference on the Child Online Protection in China. We sincerely invite all of you to come to China at that time to share and discuss practical experiences and the future prospects of China's online protection with us. Let us collaborate to create a safe, empowering online environment. Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ms. Zhao, for so clearly and succinctly outlining also the importance of crafting strategies across a range of different levers and building blocks, the role of building digital literacy skills, the role of lawmakers, and the importance of knowledge exchange and also cooperation. Really appreciate that intervention. Now let's move from China to South Africa, turning to our second speaker to bring the perspective of a national regulator for online services. I'm very delighted to introduce Advocate Lindhorst joining us online, who's an executive responsible for research, regulatory development, registration and licensing compliance and enforcement at South Africa's Film and Publication Board. She has more than 10 years experience in regulatory policy, legal, compliance, and enforcement. Welcome to you, Advocate Lindhorst. The South African Film and Publication Board has taken a proactive stance on child online safety through regulatory frameworks, public education, and community outreach. In your efforts to protect children in digital spaces, how do you navigate the balance between driving systemic accountability among digital platforms equipping users, especially children and caregivers, with digital literacy, and ensuring accessible mechanisms for redress when harm occurs. So, very easy question for you. Thank you so much for joining us. Over to you.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having us. So as the Film and Publication Board, we are an online safety regulator that is really responsible for ensuring that South Africans are protected from online harms. So as a regulator, we have regulatory frameworks that we have. So streamers of films, games, and certain publications are required to register with us as the Film and Publication Board. So that gives us an opportunity to ensure that we are able to have the checks and balances, but through the law, we are able to ensure that the measures that they have ensures that there's online safety for children. But more importantly, when it comes to social media platforms, as a regulator, we ensure that where there is a prohibited content, harmful content that is brought to their attention through issuing our takedown notice to ensure that prohibited content that might cause psychological harm to children is being removed. So when it comes to the issue of education and awareness, that is also our area that we focus on as a regulator, because giving digital skills, just like China, that is our priority, to ensure that South Africans are given digital skills, especially parents. That becomes the most important part, because children have a right to responsible parenting, and they also have the right to privacy. Whilst outside the mandate of the FPB, but as a country, we also have privacy laws that ensures that children's rights are also protected, and platforms are required to ensure that they comply with those laws. But on a day-to-day basis, we have a team of dedicated advocacy officers who goes to schools and ensures that children are protected and educated in terms of how they're supposed to conduct themselves online. We also have toolkits that empowers them, including the teachers and parents. So that is the work that we do as the Film and Publication Board. We work closely with law enforcement agencies, especially on issues of child sexual abuse material, where we have a team of social workers who are also our investigators that works on the case close with the police to make sure that they compile the reports that we take to court and serves as evidence. We have a dedicated committee. So if one feels their right is being affected by online content, they can lodge a complaint with us, and that can be taken to the Enforcement Committee, which is a quasi-judicial body. And what makes it important is that we are not competing with any other matters through the court process. This is a dedicated quasi-judicial body that is focusing on issues of online safety and other compliance issues within our mandate.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Advocate Lindhorst, for giving us that very different perspective of a regulator. You're using different keywords that tease out such an important groups of people and professionals that play an important role in this. Social workers, law enforcement, investigators, these are very important elements for us to think about. But with that, we're going to take another shift of gears. When we think about children's online experiences, it's natural to think of regulators or the responsibility of social media companies or other players in the tech sector. We also have our two next speakers who will help to shed a light on the important roles and responsibilities of other players and influencers in the broader ecosystem that also have a very critical part to play in delivering positive change for children. And they will also share about work being done with UNICEF. I'll turn to Caroline Eriksson, who joins you in the room, who is the head of the social media and active ownership at Norges Bank Investment Management, or MBIM. Caroline heads the social team within the active ownership area of MBIM. In this role, she leads the work on policy development and engagement with portfolio companies on social sustainability topics, including children's rights. Welcome to the panel, Caroline. As an investor, MBIM interacts with a large number of companies all around the world. What is the role that investors can play in advancing responsible business conduct for child rights and safety online? And how is MBIM addressing the topic of child rights and responsible business in the digital space? Over to you, Caroline.
Thank you so much, Josie. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks to everyone following here in the room and online. NBIM is a global financial investor in almost 9,000 companies in 70 markets. So we own a small slice of most of the companies in the world. As a global investor, we depend on well-functioning markets and a long-term sustainable development in economic, environmental, and social sense. We want companies to operate responsibly and with a long-term horizon. And to ensure long-term returns, as a minority shareholder, we can use our leverage to influence companies and improve market practices. Child rights in the digital environment is an important topic for us. We are a fund for future generations, and about 30% of today's population are children, and they spend an increasing amount of time online. Failure to respect children's rights can be a material risk for companies. That it can entail legal, financial, reputational risk, and they can affect their license to operate. And it goes beyond digital companies, right? As Josie mentioned, for example, think about retail. They may not consider themselves a tech company, but they may impact children's rights through digital advertising, through other ways of their operation. So it's a topic that's relevant to companies across sectors and across markets. It's also an area where we see an increasing amount of regulation. I can mention the EU Digital Services Act or other types of regulation in other markets. This is a regulation that asks companies to be open about how they're addressing and managing impacts on children's rights online. This is why we have entered a partnership with UNICEF over the last few years addressing exactly this topic. Together, BSR and UNICEF have done research on companies' reports and looked at more than 200 reports and to see how they address child rights impacts online. They found that only a few of them actually meaningfully address how the companies impact children's rights. We also experience this in our bilateral dialogue with companies. They see it as a material topic, but how to address this in reporting is still an area of development. So UNICEF and BSR, together with industry, academia, and civil society, have developed a set of disclosure recommendations and a guidance that we will soon publish and share with everyone. In fact, I can give a little teaser today. We will launch this officially on Thursday, the 27th of June. I'm really excited about this. It will be a webinar, and I'm going to actually show, yes, here on the screen. You can scan this QR code and sign up to attend the launch webinar. Really excited about this. Watch this space, and thank you so much. Hope to see you there.
Thank you so much for that intervention, Caroline. I think it's so important for us to expand our minds and think about the different roles that actors who might be more of the quote-unquote unusual suspects and the very important influence and role that they can play in advancing the goals that we're talking about. And I hope to see all of you joining us in 2 days on Thursday for the launch of the disclosure recommendations, which will also include the research that Caroline described. So with that, I will move us on to our final speaker. But before I do, a quick reminder, if you are joining in person or on the Zoom, you are very welcome to make a comment or a question in the chat, and hopefully we will have time to address some of those at the end. So again, And this is something also that Caroline gestured towards, is that when thinking about the variety of industry players that are relevant for child rights and safety online, the deployers of digital technologies are also key stakeholders, not only those that develop digital technologies. Alex Gelt joins us online. He's the digital ethics leader for Inter-IKEA Group, with responsibility to develop digital ethics practices across the IKEA value chain. He has experience of initiating and embedding digital ethics in several public and private organizations through his work with the UK Civil Service and Deloitte. Alex, what does Inter-IKEA Group have to do with child rights and safety online? This is a question that I'm sure you get asked in different places. And what actions are you taking? How can other brands play an active role in understanding and addressing their impacts on child rights and safety online? Over to you, Alex.
Oh.
I don't think we can hear you, Alex. If we can test the mic. That looks like it's working now.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Josie, and yeah, good morning to those of you in Norway, and hey to everyone joining online. And thanks for having me here today at IGF, and great speakers that we've had so far, and thank you to the fellow panelists. And echoing a lot of what Caroline has just said in terms of being a responsible business. So first of all, what does IKEA have to do with child rights? And we've made the commitment to integrate child rights into everything we do across all of the IKEA organizations. And we take that responsibility to ensure that children come to no harm as a result of the direct contact that we have with children and the indirect contact that we have wherever we do business in the IKEA value chain. And whilst we think that coming to the stores is a key part of the IKEA experience, we know that contact with people happens increasingly in an online context. So actually most of our shopping journeys start online through the more established e-commerce websites and applications that we have, but also through platforms, search or social media, and other types of emerging platform engagement, whether that's peer-to-peer reselling marketplaces or social gaming. And where we have direct contact, we put measures in place that protect child rights. So whether that's our policy and processes on child safeguarding, the data protection mechanisms that we put in place when we engage with children when we're developing our products, or for the technologies that we put in the home. So this is our IKEA smart product range, where we've taken an inclusive design approach with diverse families to hear the voice of the child in relation to design choices that we should make when we're developing those products. And it was mentioned there by Caroline a bit, marketing and digital marketing, I think, is a big area where we have contact with children. So when it comes to marketing, we have a strong point of view already for many years on how we portray children in marketing material. So these are the images and the media content that goes out into the world. And we make sure that we show and express children in a respectful way, in a way that brings them no harm, and shows them in the positive light that they need to be. So this is largely what's in our control and can be directly governed within the IKEA value chain. However, we also want to take a child rights perspective in the more indirect contact places that we have across the value chain. And that needs a more nuanced approach based mostly on the relationships that we have with partners. So again, on this marketing topic, we're pretty clear, or very clear, on what we require when we are addressing children, that there is no direct targeting of children in our commercial messages. However, we don't just stop there. And we know that a lot of child rights harms can also come from other types of practices other than direct targeting. So whether that's new monetization techniques like gamification or new models of engagement from influencer marketing or content creator marketing that represent a new form of child labor. And we know this happens on the platforms that we're engaged with, and we want to take responsibility of how that conduct happens. And brands like IKEA are the companies that fund this digital marketing ecosystem. We buy the media space to engage with people who want to buy our products. And we think that comes with responsibilities and ability to influence. And we want to influence because we know that there is a growing knowledge that these interactions have the potential for harm. So in the partnership that we've had with UNICEF, we've wanted to research those harms and understand how to best counteract them, especially through the complexity of the different actors in the digital marketing ecosystem. It's not just a binary of brands and platforms, there's many actors within the space and many leverage points that we need to engage with. And this allows us to make informed decisions when we're partnering with media agencies or ad tech companies and the partners that we choose to engage with. And we pass this through our value chain and how we then govern our brand and marketing operations. So this research has enabled the development of a toolkit to break down the due diligence actions and responsibilities that each actor in the value chain should take. So us and those that we are then giving our money to. It helps us to move from this kind of binary thinking of yes, no, or good or bad, should we be online or not, to have a more holistic picture of the what, the when, the who, and the how we should engage. So this toolkit will be openly available to all organizations who want to use it, but especially encourage brands who are at the start of this value chain to adopt it and work with the organizations that they outsource their actions to in order for them to adopt the requirements and recommendations, and that we can uplift the child rights perspective through the whole value chain of social media and digital marketing. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Alex, and for rounding off the panel of different perspectives, right? I think that you tease out such an important element that we return to in so many different areas of business and human rights, which is to take a value chain approach to not only look at one particular actor, but also the bigger picture of the connections in the industry, the different leverage that different actors might have on other players, and the importance of human rights due diligence, which is certainly a very important red thread that goes through the different resources that we've discussed. And again, I hope to engage with many of you in the room and online around the digital marketing work that we will be issuing later this year as well. So definitely watch that space. We do have some moments for engagement, so please do engage with us on the chat. Thank you to one participant who's sharing some research that they have. This is wonderful. And if you are in the room and would like to engage, then please also do it in the chat. I will give a moment or two to anybody who'd like to participate. And if no questions, I will very happily hand over to Sunita to guide us through part 2 of the forum. Fabulous. It was all very clear, no questions at all. I will hand over back to you, Sunita. Thank you so much. Very much looking forward to the part 2 of this forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josiane. I'm going to ask you both to exit the stage, please, on that side. And we'll move over to the second segment of this forum. We are again going to be joined by 2 panelists online, as well as 2 in the room. So I'll ask Celia and Lisa, please, to join me on stage. So in this segment, we're going to be keeping our focus on the importance and concrete actions that various stakeholders can take, particularly to ensure that the digital world, the value and the impact that it has to offer, is more accessible and available to those who could benefit the most. So for this panel today, I am joined here on stage by Lisa Sivertsen, Director of Human Development at NORAD, I'm joined also by Celia Dahl, First Secretary for Development Cooperation at the Embassy of Sweden in Pretoria. And online, we're joined by two speakers, Tawhida Shiropa, founder and CEO of Moner Bandhu. She joins us from Bangladesh. And Anina Wersen, co-founder and chief impact officer of Open CRVS. So keeping in mind the reflections and recommendations we heard in the first segment, we're going to focus our discussion further to an often still overlooked and excluded half of the world's population, women and girls. What we know is that at present, 31% of women worldwide are not in education, employment, or training. 740 million women in developing economies remain unbanked. 1 in 5 adolescent girls are married before the age of 18. These are some of the wicked challenges, some of the big problems that many of us here in the room, and definitely those of us on stage, are working to tackle on a day-to-day basis. Digital technologies do, in fact, hold significant promise to help us address some of these challenges, but we are currently falling far short in realizing that potential. In fact, we see that not only are we missing solutions to address those challenges, often completely in the market, when they do exist, we're not able to access them, we're not able to scale them, because they are behind often closed or prohibitory intellectual property regimes. When they are accessible, when solutions are being designed for everybody, we often see that actually they fail to meet the needs of women and girls. For instance, we know that almost half of publicly documented bias in AI systems is bias against women and girls. We know that only about 2% of medical research funding goes towards pregnancy, childbirth, and reproductive health. If we look at the private sector, only 3% of investment going into digital health is actually focused on solutions that are addressing female health challenges. Similarly, in private capital, only 2% of investment in 2023 went to companies that are co-founded or founded by women. And we at the Venture Fund, UNICEF runs a venture fund that provides seed funding to entrepreneurs in developing countries, really had to learn that the hard way. We realized that when we did investing as usual, we just mirrored what we saw in the private capital industry. But at the same time, the investment opportunities in women's health in particular are massive. The industry is projected to grow to $1.2 trillion by 2030. And so clearly, for all stakeholders around the table, there are massive gains to be made if we start focusing our efforts more deliberately on meeting the needs of women and girls. So what can we do to close this gap? How can we make inclusive technology for everyone? How can we leverage this opportunity? So I'd like to start with you, Lisa, please. Thank you for joining us today. I think you had the shortest commute of all of us to get here. We have partnered for a number of years together, particularly around digital public goods, and we co-founded the Digital Public Goods Alliance. Would you be able to share with us your observations of some of the gaps that you've seen in your work? Where efforts around digitalization, around innovation at country level have really failed to meet the needs of women and girls.
Thank you, Sunita, and thank you for inviting us. Yeah, I did have a short commute, but I was delayed because the trains were delayed, so sorry to everyone about that on behalf of Oslo. Thank you so much for inviting us to be here, and I think your introduction really highlighted so many of the gaps and the structural barriers that women and girls are facing, and I think gender-blind digital tools and infrastructures will really enhance those gaps and disparities and also the structural discrimination. So from NORAD and Norwegian side, we are very committed to do what we can from our side to build down those structural barriers. And I think even though the gaps really do still exist, and even though we also see some very worrying negative trends when it comes to gender and marginalization in terms of access to digital tools, but also the failure of designing gender diverse tools. And I think also there is a lot of research pointing to the lack of trust in those systems, which I think is a big issue for all societies in the world. What gives me hope is that there are also so many examples of partners and also governments working together with the private sector, research institutions, civil society, women's social movements to close those gaps. So that's, and if I could highlight some of those examples, there are so many. I think from the Norwegian side and NORAD, we try to do what we can to support initiatives and new tools, but we also really try to focus on the system approach. What can we do to enhance and support global digital public goods, but also the infrastructure that every country in the world really needs to invest in to make sure that you have inclusive digitalization. So we are so grateful about the opportunity to work with UNICEF and also with UNESCO. We work on engaging more women and girls to get education and work within the STEM sectors. I think that's a really crucial investment that we need to do for the years and the future to come. And we are also really excited about the digital education strategy of UNICEF. Norway has been supporting for more 20 years this digital public good infrastructure that is being designed by the University of Oslo. Has a really complicated name, DHIS2, but it's an excellent tool. It was designed to be a low-cost, open-source infrastructure for dealing with health data for lower-income countries. During the pandemic, it actually proved so easy to use and such a safe tool that it spread also, and it was taken into use also by a lot of middle-income and high-income countries, including Norway. We started using it ourselves. So that's an excellent and important tool that we will continue. More than 100 countries are now using it. And then OpenCR-VS is also another system that we have invested in. So that's an open source system for birth registration and a lot of other official tools as well to use, which I think provides, being open source, it also builds trust and it makes it possible to adjust to the needs of women and girls.
Yeah, fantastic. And you've set the scene really nicely for some of the discussion points we'll dig into a little bit later. We've actually got Anina joining us from OpenCR-VS. I think she can probably speak to that specific example even more. And we'll try and talk a little bit more about this crossover between safety and trust and open source as well in the second half with two of the product owners that are going to be joining us online. So thank you for that. Celia, I'd be interested to hear from your experience leading SIDA's engagement regionally, what successful approaches you've seen in your region around digital innovations that's being designed with and for women and girls. Maybe specifically how that's influenced your viewpoint, your engagement, your choices and approaches in the region.
Thank you, Sunita, and thank you for inviting me. And I think it's great that we have both SIDA and NORAD in the same room, since we are, of course, allies and working closely with a lot of different thematics. At the Swedish Embassy in South Africa, we work specifically on integrating the Swedish government strategy for sexual reproductive health and rights in Africa So we work with, of course, many different stakeholders, UN agencies, civil society, social businesses, entrepreneurs. And I think globally, SIDA has about 140 partners working specifically on digitalization as well. So it is a priority for us and also, of course, for the Swedish government. But I think for SIDA it's very important that we support programs and partners that actually are bridging that digital gap and the gender divide as well, and ensuring that women and girls actually can access digital tools that are useful for them as well. And that's one of the reasons why we have recently joined into a partnership with UNICEF for this specific Femtech initiative, because we also know that entrepreneurs are the ones who will develop the new models. They'll come up with the new technologies, with the new ideas that can potentially enable economic growth, but also lift people out of poverty, which is, of course, our end goal. And however, as you very well said, Sunita, women are very underrepresented in this area, and we see that there's a lot of digital products being developed that are not at all addressing the actual needs of women and girls, and especially within SRHR, where we work a lot. And we also know that in many rural areas, in many countries, women and girls, they don't have access to digital devices. They don't have internet. So how do we reach them with information? So for us, it's important also to support initiatives that not only cover this gap, but also work on providing correct data. They might work on domestic financing, for example, or trying to have inclusive policies and legislations in their specific countries. But most importantly, that the solutions that we are supporting are locally adapted and actually are for the groups that we are intended to work with, and also for the groups that normally are left behind, like the LGBTQI community, for example. A few examples from our region of partners that we support, and I think that in the previous sessions it was touched upon as well, the backside of digitalization and the harm of children online. So we have one partner working specifically on ending gender-based violence, and they have developed different tools on how to work with that, and they work specifically on addressing technology-facilitated GBV, which is a new word I just learned in the Southern Africa region, but it's very interesting because they also see that GBV has increased online and is also posing a risk of normalizing violence. And so they work with both civil society organizations, but also governments in ensuring that technology-facilitated GBV is incorporated into national legislation and policies. So that's one example of how we can work with that in regards to women and girls. We also have another partner working on improving access to SRHR information in West and Central Africa, which is a region in Africa that is it's very difficult to work with SRHR, and it's sometimes very controversial as well. So you need to find ways to share information in a way that it's not super controversial. And we also know that youths are more vulnerable, for example, to HIV, to other sexual transmitted diseases, and also early and unwanted pregnancies. And with this app, they can provide, they can gain access and information that is anonymous and also safe, and they can also get information on how to find health facilities where they can get support. And so far, this app has reached about 9 million young people in that region. So just two examples on how we work on that.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And you called out specifically, I think, the ingenuity of entrepreneurs in kind of putting forward and trying new approaches. So I'd like to turn now to our online speakers. We have Tawida joining us from Bangladesh. And she's a recipient of the UNICEF Venture Fund as part of our health cohort that we launched last year. And her team provides holistic well-being services in person and online in Bangladesh for children and young adults. and they've developed an app where, with support of the UNICEF Venture Fund, they're looking at building an open machine learning model to help them enhance detection and also recommendations to parents. So, Tawhida, I'd love to hear from you if we can kind of dig into a little more deeper into a specific solution and a specific product. Kind of hear from you how this idea of really putting the needs and rights, like safety, like data privacy and others, of women and girls at the center of how you've developed your product. Over to you, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sunita. And a very good morning, very good afternoon from my side. And thank you for having me today. And yeah, first of all, I wanted to really show my gratitude to the UNICEF innovation team, especially UNICEF Venture Fund, and because I'm here because of the journey. And now I like to talk more about the technology and the product and more about the passion, what we are building right now in Bangladesh. So at Monerbontu is a woman-led startup company, so where we're building and transforming the mental health and well-being for all, especially the women, girls, because it's a woman-led company. So you're always, considering the women in our first priority, and where we develop the technological team and the other things, we always mention and prioritize that. So Monerbontu is transforming the mental health and well-being using AI and the machine learning model and human-centric approaches, including the counseling, the psychometric assessments and well-being tips and techniques and all these assessment as well. And to talk about the girls and women's safety is this is something we always think the first thing we have to make sure, because it's not because when we start the conversation from the very scratch and building our technology, especially the Manushi app, which is for the child well-being, and we are using the open source and very much aligned with the digital public goods. And so we're keeping those mind and with this spirit, we make sure that it's co-designed with the girls. It's not like something we build, considering our idea, our thoughts, but I think thousands of students, adolescents, girls, not only from the urban area, then the rural and the semi-urban, even the remote area girls who are taking our services every day. So we wanted to build the app with them. We sat with them. We talked hours after hours. What are their struggle? What are the things they have been gone through? And they told us about their being afraid to report the abuse, especially in their abuse by sometimes their community, or there's something happened is the gender-based violence they faced, even about hiding their anxiety, especially the anxiety in the exam anxiety, another anxiety. Then sometimes they thought about the self-harm issues. So, and they shared at the time when they are going through this kind of issue, there is no private space so they can share those things, because they think maybe it would be public, or they will be, again, they will be bullied from their peers or in the social media or the online platform. So we built and considering their thoughts, and when we sat with them, so and we always make sure those things, we build the anonymized assessment, and of course we design this quick check-in space in our app and make sure we could choose a female counselor, so anytime they can reach out to us through our platform. And another thing we always wanted to make sure, the safety, for girls, safety is not about the encryption. We said our model or our app is end-to-end encrypted. But for girls, what we have seen, we have experienced for girls, safety is the emotional safety. So when a girl fills out the check-in, well-being check-ins, or fill out anything assessment. So we wanted to make sure from our side we prioritize their data protected security. Sometimes they are under arrest might be, so they don't have the access on the mobile phones or smartphone. So we take the verbal consent from their parents, but sometimes parents are not that much educated. And those times we also call them and discuss with them, these are the things, so this will be helpful for your child well-being, and then we get the consent from them. And of course, we wanted to make sure the data and security with that note, and of course, and with that sense, we said like our backend system, and we have the risk flags like the high risk flag to responses in the real time. So whenever we can see anytime kinds of the gender-based or trauma-centric anonymized data, we said, so immediately our counselors or our female counselor, they respond to the client, and of course we maintain those all the sensitive escalation protocol, we always maintain those. And number 3, I wanted to mention like the privacy is like when we developed our whole process, even the UX design, we always got the feedback from the customer and always input those feedback into our site and the app as well. And with that means like what we want to say like this, of course it's encrypted, stored with the very rooted access controlled by our tech team, and we also maintain the global standards things. And it is true, I think Sunita mentioned at the first part, and I think I heard all the conversation from our amazing panelists. So this is true, like the AI models can be biased to some point, and that includes also the large language model and the ML and the machine learning models. So we also wanted to make sure, like, of course, this data have to be protected, have to have the guided and accurate, as much as accurate data, then we can provide those things. And of course I think that later on maybe that we will discuss more on the open source. But what we have seen so far with when we're deploying this, almost 10,000 students at adolescents, including the majority of the adolescents girls in the rural school and some schools in the urban area. So, and what we have seen, like, we got that, I think, huge response from their side, and that really helped us to accurate more data processing system. And of course, with that note, we maintain this like we wanted to make sure like the whole protocols, the whole sensitive things would be the gender sensitized. We maintain the gender sensitive framework, as it of course this had to be very human centric, and we wanted to really get all those advantages from AI and technology, so it can be more accessible for everyone. And one thing I really wanted to make sure from my side, and this is our vision, is like the Manusya app is not just an app, it's just not a upcoming technology. We wanted to make sure it's a promise to all the young girls, so they can feel safe, so they will be heard. And the most important thing, whatever they have gone through, they don't need to be gone through at their side. So this is something we built from our side. And yes, here we are. And thank you, the UNICEF Venture Fund. So they give us I think, lots of insights about the digital public good and, of course, the open source. So we wanted to make sure it's very cost effective and low maintenance cost and very transparent to what we're building right now. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Tawhida, and really good points, I think, around, thank you, getting some applause in the room in case you can't hear it. Really good points around, really emphasizing that product development and product design is a necessary part, but in no way sufficient if we think of kind of inclusivity of an entire program and making sure we reach women and girls and provide them that emotional safety that you spoke to. I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into an aspect that several speakers have already touched on, which is this idea of creating digital solutions that are digital public goods. If you haven't already and you're not familiar with the concept, there's a great booth just outside by the Digital Public Goods Alliance where you can learn a little bit more about the concept and meet some of the partner organizations. There's also a high-level panel this afternoon that's going to bring together major players in the digital public goods space. My little plug. But here we share this commitment, and we have panelists that are very actively chosen to develop in the open and to develop open source solutions. So I'd like to turn, Anina, I'm going to start with you because we haven't heard from you yet. Really, and hear your perspective about what role does this approach and focus on open source actually play in improving inclusivity and safety of solutions? How does that approach enable us to build that trust and to actually operationalize this commitment that we have?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Sunita, and good morning, good afternoon To all of you, it's an honour to join the panel, and I feel truly inspired, as I so often do, when listening to the work that other people are doing in this area. So thank you as well for all the work that you're doing. So as Sunita mentioned, I'm from Open CRBS, and we are a digital public good for civil registration and vital statistics. So that's the registration of births, deaths, marriages, divorces, adoptions, and the use of that data for vital statistics purposes. And when we talk about inclusivity by design, it's really not just a principle. It's something that we can demonstrate in practice. And as a digital public good, Open CRBS gives countries a chance to see what inclusive digital services can look like right out of the box. So when a country starts to use Open CRBS, they will see a pre-configured version of the system based on our default country. It's a fictitious country that we've created called Farajaland, and it supports a number of different vital events. And so the forms that they see initially are designed specifically to spark important conversations. So these countries can then subsequently configure the forms. They can make them work exactly as they need. That's the whole premise of Open CRBS, that it's configurable for a range of different country contexts. But they can see out of the box what is possible. So what's an example of trying to spark these conversations? Take birth registration, for example. In many countries, the father's details are either assumed or required. But Open CRBS shows an alternative, and that is a birth registration form that does not mandate the father's information. And that simple design choice opens the door to discussions, even at the highest levels, about how to create more inclusive services for single mothers, for survivors of gender-based violence, or for any situation that doesn't fit a narrow norm. And we've seen in many countries when this comes up, when we do a demonstration of the system, we have the reaction, oh, well, why are the father's details not there? Of course, a woman would always be married. And these conversations at the highest level really allow us to explore these assumptions and also inform and educate those who may just not have access to this information. We've had some really, really interesting, engaging discussions where people have come away with a different perspective. It's a powerful example of how design can lead policy and how a digital public good can educate and influence across government just by showing what's possible. We also use data to reinforce this idea. So Open CRBS includes dashboards specifically configured to highlight insights into the experiences of women and girls, insights that too often go unseen. And as civil registration is the only continuous source of population data, it really is so rich if you just ask it the right questions. Imagine if a government could pinpoint where young mothers were giving birth so they could direct maternity services to those areas, or whether they could understand where and how women are dying to target life-saving interventions. Just being able to visualize these options, so out of the box, Open CRBS comes with this option, and countries can take it away if they don't want it, but more often than not, they see this data and they accept the data. And in fact, then they might bring in another ministry, for instance, Ministry of Women's Affairs in many countries, that they can actually see this data. And countries may then also explore, well, who do we want to allow access to this disaggregated data so that, for instance, maybe the partners in country could even have this data to be able to target more specific interventions. And this really, for us, is the power of inclusive design, backed by meaningful data. It's not just about technology, and as Tawhida said, there's so much more to an implementation of Open CRBS than just this design, but it certainly allows us to begin shifting systems and showing governments what good and inclusive can truly look like. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Nina. I really like those very specific examples, and often that starting point of a conversation, right, opens up way more opportunities and possibilities of what can be included in what could be just a digital solution. Tawhida, I'd love to briefly hear from you as well, how that focus on open source in particular has allowed you to put a focus on inclusivity and safety. Tawhida, can you hear us?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, thank you very much, Sunita, again. So yeah, and of course, that's the first thing from our experience and Monabonto, we reach more than 2 million people across Bangladesh. So we have I think, thousands of millions of people, they are getting our services. And committing to that, to open source and the digital public goods has been one of the fundamental things to ensure the both inclusivity and the safety, especially when we're working with the vulnerable communities, young girls, adolescent girls, and marginalized communities, and the women, of course, definitely. So one thing we wanted to make sure using the open source, because when we're starting working with the open source code, this is very transparent, right? What our code is open. So of course, the anonymous data, the encrypted data. So we don't want to show anyone's personalized information, but the whole coding system that can be open, and the communities, the stakeholders, including the government, can see exactly how the systems are going, right? What a decision already made. Even the safeguard policy, what we have taken so far. And one of the things, the vital things we wanted to make sure within these things, dealing with the sensitive data, the mental health and the well-being data is one of the very personalized and very sensitive data what we are dealing at this moment. And that's the open source, one of the things, we believe that open source align with the digital public goods, make us very accountable to our customer, to the people, to the young girls. Maybe they don't understand open source, they don't understand the data and security, but they understand their privacy, right? So I think open source and the digital public good, that's really aligned us to accountable to the girls who share their data with us, or their parents or the mothers, right? And another thing is the accountability, builds the trust. So I think that's the fundamental things when you, providing the mental health services to everyone, there's a trust, the confidentiality. So that's the things of, we, align with that. And then another two things of course, the localizations and the tools the market, the meaningful things, what we are building. So as communities, sometimes we went to many communities when even deploying and developing the Manushi app. So there is many communities, they don't have the proper educations, and some of the, parents, they're they're very low income, and they don't understand the data and everything. So we contextualize all those things in their language, sometimes in our language in Bangla, and sometimes in their language, more local things. So we make sure that they understand what we are taking from them, right? So that's the open source and the whole that digital public goods. When I read out all the digital public goods alliance, there's missions, there's statements. So we feel like this is something that's very good for us, and proper things. And one of the things when we act with the open system, the local developers and organization customize those things, and that's also very cost effective, because they don't need to start these things from the very scratch from their side. So they can, anywhere around the world, across the world, so they can't just remodeling those things they develop from deploy in their local context. So, and of course there is a flexibility. This is one of the things that's what turns the digital a public good turns into a human solution. So that's one of the things that's very fascinating what we found. And I think that number 3, which the last things I wanted to mention, the removing all those license fees, when we start Bondhu, and we suffer and struggled with the license fees, because sometimes we have the credit card, but we can't pay from the rules and regulations from the Central Bank of Bangladesh. So we struggled a lot. So I think the upcoming people who are very much passionate in the tech industry, and especially the females or the entrepreneurs, I really wanted to cheer for them. So, and advocate for them, so they can take all these leverages for this, the open source code, what we are building. So this is something, this makes all those things more inclusive, and of course the safety, that because I mentioned, like all this accountability, make sure the safety and the trust. So that's where we're here. And that, of course, it helps with the low resource institutions, so they don't need to spend lots of money on that. And of course, they can adopt, they can share, they can scale the tool. So there's all these things are there. So they just need to, hold those things and make sure the accountability and the trust. And it's, of course, it's not about the code, it's the values, right? So the good digital public goods, they have the values. And UNICEF Venture Fund, they taught us that how can we, leverage all those, I think, good values and good values incorporated to our impactful business. So I think that's the things we are doing right now. And we have to really make sure that no one is left behind. So we have to do accountable to everyone. And I think open source and digital public goods is the two fundamental things that can make sure that. And yeah, we are ready to scale those things in our program and in our app to across the world. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Tawhida, and I think you touched really nicely on all the different benefits we see from open source. So from like a product design, a development, but also a business model perspective around having to tackle questions around fees and licensing, and how really that model enables others to pick up your work, adapt it, and scale it more easily. So thank you. The other piece that I appreciated is that often we associate digital public goods just with its open sourceness, but you spoke also very nicely and brought us to our attention how the digital public goods standard isn't just about licensing. It's also around safety. It's also around protection. It's about human rights being standards. And so that digital public goods standards really is something that many of us are trying to hold ourselves to in order to ensure we are respecting human rights in our digital efforts, as well as access and inclusivity. So thanks so much for highlighting those different elements. Lisa, I'd like to come to you on the same question, probably from a different perspective, though I don't know whether you have built and coded open source products yourself, maybe. It's just to reflect a little bit more with us on what value you've really seen in your focus on digital public goods and on open source, how that's been kind of a conduit and a facilitator of your focus on safety and inclusivity.
So yeah, thank you so much. It's really interesting to hear from OpenCRVS, but also entrepreneurs that are building these systems. And I think you mentioned it already, how these systems make it possible to build accountability and trust, because they are transparent, they are open for external audits, and they are also adaptable. From our side, we've actually developed our own open source data policy that we are trying to use across the different areas we work. And there is a lot of resistance, there is a lot of resistance from different companies that are, selling systems that are not open sourced. So this is something that we are really trying to push across areas such as education and health, but also the work that we are doing on environment and climate. So it's a bit. It's challenging, but I think also it's crucial. It's the only way forward, I think, to build these accountable and open systems. It's also a lot about costs, because open standards makes it possible for different systems to talk to each other and work together. I think we've all been frustrated trying to access different digital systems that are not working together. It has a lot of costs. It's very challenging for everyone. I like the term that Anita was using about emotional safety, giving up your data and engaging with digital systems within national ID systems or health and education. It's a lot of very sensitive data, and you need to have that trust that it's not going to be misused by someone at the other end. And then, of course, open source systems do have that potential for being more adapted to the different kinds of users, also marginalized parts of the population in any country. And we really need that to be able to continue to work against those gaps.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think particularly some of those privacy concerns are really relevant to those that tend to be more marginalized, tend to be traditionally more excluded, right? And so that's almost of even higher importance when we work with those sorts of communities. So as we kind of move towards the last piece of our discussion, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to reflect a little bit on the role of stakeholders that are not present on this panel. And kind of what their calls might be or what their reflections might be. Before we do that, I wanted to specifically turn to Celia. And as part of our ongoing discussions around how we partner together on the Venture Fund, we also have started exploring how we can actually leverage private capital, different financing modalities beyond traditional grant, beyond traditional development funding, to actually move capital flows more towards inclusive technology. So I'd love to hear a little bit from you on kind of SIDA's approach to engaging those different financing instruments. What have you seen happen in that space?
Thank you, Sunita, and also, first of all, thank you to all the panelists. Very interesting, and I think that this is, what you touched upon now is so important. I think we all have seen the changing in the donor landscape for the past year, and it's been, of course, challenging both as donors and as partners working on the other side to find financing for the work that they do. For the Swedish government, it's a very high priority that the Swedish Development Corporation should focus on leverage funding from other kind of sources, and also supporting our partners in doing that. I think we believe that the part of the additional financial flows to long-term solutions that will empower women and girls and youth needs to come from other, for example, from private investments, and not, and also that our partners shouldn't be so donor dependent, to be honest. And in doing that, I think we as donors have a very important responsibility as well. And we know that, for example, today there are very limited opportunities for private actors to do business in fragile context or in emerging markets. Local entrepreneurs, they have very limited risk absorption capacity, for example. So how can we as donors support them? So at SIDA, we have different financial models that has been, well, quite successful, I would say. And one of them is, for example, a guarantee. And that's where SIDA will help reduce the risk to a lender. So, for example, if we have a new startup, an organization working on health for women and rights in a country in Africa, and they want to expand their business, they want to enter new markets, they want to sell products in markets that they haven't been in before, for example. The local bank might be hesitant, saying it's too big of a risk. Then SIDA can cover that potential risk for the bank and enable the organizations to grow and start their business. So that's something we've done a lot in other sectors, such as energy and the transport sector, environment, and this year we will start doing it in health and SRHR. So very excited about that. But that, I think, it's a very successful model for trying to find other kind of funding. Another model that we use is mobilizing of capital. And that's where I think SIDA has a very important role in being catalytic in connecting different partners with each other. So we can help our partners meet other potential financial partners that can provide support to them. And this has been something we've been working on for many, many years, but it's also a way of create sustainability for our partners and less dependency on us, and also forcing them to leverage new money. So what we do is that we say, if you can find X amount of money from other funders, we will match that. And I think that's a model that works really well, and especially now when we have when we want to expand into femtech and work more closely on that and work more on new kind of partnerships, I think it's very important that we look at different financial models as well to create more sustainability for our partners, which is I think should be an end goal with aid, that the government donors should be less, and then it will be other kind of financing flows coming in. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Celia. I think there's a really long way to go, right, to close that financing gap. So really appreciate those efforts. We know, for instance, that less than 1% of VCs or venture capital funding goes to Africa. It's crazy once you kind of think about how unequal that distribution is. And then, I spoke earlier about the small proportion that goes to female founded businesses. So if you put that on top of each other, right, you end up with a very, very skewed picture of where private capital is currently flowing. On the venture fund, UNICEF Venture Fund side, we've seen similar experiences. And what we've been really excited about is seeing how the development funding that you've mentioned as well can be catalytic. It can de-risk, right? It can sort of showcase that those risks can be managed, how can they be addressed, what do those markets actually have to offer, how competitive those solutions actually are from an investment opportunity perspective. And so, we're really looking forward to having more of these conversations with private investors to see how that capital can support some of the aims we've discussed here today. I'll turn my attention to our two speakers online first, and Lisa, I'll come back to you at the end to just reflect a little bit more on the question as sort of a final call to action in a minute about who else should be at this table to move from kind of maybe what are still fairly niche approaches to shifting entire systems, and what role do you think that they need to play? Anina, I'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I think we could probably talk for a long time just on this topic, but I'm going to build, if I may, just on what Celia was talking about, and I am going to call also to the donors. I mean, we are incredibly lucky at Open CRBS. We have the support of NORAD, who really, as a donor, are gold for us, because they see the importance of funding the core product. And as a digital public good, that's something really, really difficult to find kind of funding that's very flexible, that understands that we need to manage and maintain a digital product that is ultimately supporting critical government infrastructure, and not tying that to specific implementations, for instance. But I would call further to build also on Celia's point. The challenge we have as digital public goods is to be able to invest in a few different things. One is absolutely to become sustainable. So we have to think about how we can generate revenue. And at Open CRBS, we're spending a significant amount of time on this, looking at how we can, in a market that really thinks and expects us to be free forever, how we can change that, how we can start charging for our services. And in fact, actually, several countries and partners have seen the value that we can bring to the table, but we do have to start operating more like a business. And sometimes that can be very uncomfortable for partners working in our domain, which is totally understandable. But in the same way, to become sustainable, we need to think about creative ways of generating revenue. And just like for-profit companies most of them invest in research and development, we also want to invest in research and development. And in fact, we would love to establish a research and development branch specifically for women and girls, because we truly believe that there's so much potential to unlock, both in their experiences from a protection perspective, but also in the economy. And we have to recognise also the values, obviously, that women bring to the economy. And so obviously civil registration, touching on all these different life events, there are so many opportunities where we can protect women and girls and prevent them from experiencing a life that doesn't allow them to become active members, for instance, in society and within the economy. But we do need donors to be able to also invest in that. And in this really difficult donor landscape, as Celia mentioned, we ask that donors take a risk to support digital public goods upfront to invest. And our promise to donors now in the conversations that we're having is that in 5 years' time, we want to be self-sustainable. But in order to get there, we need upfront investment. We need to invest in R&D. We need to invest in our business development strategies. We need to invest in trying out different business services. And it's really not traditional. It's different. It's not necessarily what our industry is is used to, but we're certainly excited about that future because we want to become self-sustaining. We believe that the value of open CRBS has been realised. We're working with 8 countries at the moment, and there's many more who are kind of lined up to explore. And if we think about the potential of, for instance, preventing child marriage, through understanding the age of children or having data to be able to actively take steps in order to do that. That's something we want to explore more within our research and development capacity. Just think about the long-term effects that could have on women and girls, on the economy, and for businesses around the world as well. So really a call to donors to. There are always immediate challenges and problems. The world we live in, unfortunately, is experiencing too many of them at this time. But we truly believe that with upfront investment, we can become self-sustainable. And we do think the digital public goods can do that, and they can bring about more and more positive outcomes for those around the world. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Nina. Tawhida.
Yeah, I think this is the questions that I always love to answer. I think I want to start with the change, with the mindset. First, we need to change the mindset of this, of course, the stakeholder and to some point the investor, because I met many investors. Sometimes they're not convinced about the open source models or what we are building. They wanted to see the revenue from the day one, right? But yeah, throughout the process, we learned how we can, generate the revenue. And right now we're generating revenue. We're in the cash positive side and we're profitable as a startup. But I think this journey was quite difficult because access to finance as entrepreneur, I wanted to mention as a woman entrepreneur, is always very difficult, especially in the banks and the banking system. I think I wanted to mention in Bangladesh, it's really difficult to access the finance, especially in the banking system. So, and of course, we need the investors who really values the impact and who really values alongside with the innovation, right? So, and that's one of the things I really wanted to mention. And because as Sunita mentioned in the whole conversation, only 2% of, less than 2% of the VC fund, goes to the women-led startups, right? So I think we really wanted to change the picture. And I think we have all the capacity and the capability. I think it's Anina and I mentioned, we have all the, capability, we have the resources. We just need to trust, from the VC side. So, and yes, and because we have the scalability option, we have the safety security, we make sure the inclusivity, we wanted to make sure the, proper service to our young girls, the futures underserved people. So yes, and this is something I really wanted to, bring to this table. I think the VC mind, should be slightly changed. So maybe that can make a bigger difference, and of course the huge impact in this world, and of course the ensuring all this open source model, and yeah, and we are the proved example. It can be profitable, it can be generating revenue. So you just need to trust a bit on us. And thank you very much.
Thanks, Tawhida. Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I think it's we definitely need to continue to develop those public-private partnerships in order to mobilize funding. We need to engage emerging donors more. It's great to have IKEA and others on board, but we need to have more participation from the private sector. But then also the tools and the systems will not be really meeting their goals unless they also engage the users and a diversity of users, also finding ways of how to engage the marginalized communities and people to make sure that the systems actually work for everyone. I think also one last point from me, we need to recognize that digital public infrastructures and goods are essential infrastructures for any society, just like roads or electricity. We need those systems to be able to build inclusive digital societies. So I think that's a recognition as well that we need to continue to champion across any geographical context. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of the panelists, including in the first segment, for all of your openness and anecdotes and reflections today. I think it was a very rich discussion. And from my side, I hope that as we go about our business here at the forum and back home, that this discussion maybe gave each of you one specific action point that you feel you can take home with you as you look at either designing or building products. And we heard very much around the need to be deliberate in design and research to ensure diversity, to be deliberate in how products are designed, what code we choose, what models we choose, what data sets we choose. And also how important it is to be able to look under the hood of a product, to be able to create actual safety, actual data privacy, but also that emotional safety, that empowerment, so that we don't just have passive users, but we have empowered, informed users that can engage with the digital solutions we're putting out there in the market and can question us. We heard from Tawhida about accountability and how that raises the bar on accountability, which I thought was a really powerful framing. And maybe not surprisingly, I think as all of us are facing completely unprecedented challenges when it comes to the financial landscape, we heard so much about how and where each dollar, each kroner, each euro is put can really shape not just what's in the market, but who uses it and to what extent those users are actually builders and owners of what's put out there in the world today in terms of the digital landscape. So I encourage you to approach those panelists that are in the room for any further discussion that you might be interested in. Thank you very much for choosing us and for spending your precious time listening to this discussion. I, for one, really enjoyed the dialogue. And maybe at the next IGF, I'll be facilitating a panel of 4 men talking about the importance of women's health and looking at inclusive solutions. That's my hope as I walk away from this panel today. So thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day.